Alright, for this video we have powered up 3 Mikrotik CHRs and they are now on the 7.19 stable version. So notice that the template that I was using was not 7.19 but it was 7.16. What I mean by templates are the templates that I've used for the routers, so they are a VM template. So instead of using the or dragging the 7.19, so the image was still 7.16 but now corrected, so they are now running 7.19. So if we right click console and we drag over the console for this, so we are now on 7.19 stable version. So router identity or router OS identity or system identity or host name, if you will, so they are all in Mikrotik by default name. So there is no issue if you are managing a single Mikrotik, so perhaps you will not mind if the identity is still Mikrotik. However, if you'll be managing or administering multiple Mikrotik, similar in our laboratory that we'll be managing multiple Mikrotik, so it is beneficial for us to configure or to set up the router identity. It is a bit painstaking or tedious if you have to manage your Mikrotik device and try to remember it by their MAC address rather than the identity. So as you can imagine, we have to guess which one will be our R1, which one will be our R2 or R3. So obviously I could go to a safer or more simpler route wherein I will just connect this computer to a single Mikrotik rather via or behind a switch, so for me to distinguish that I'm configuring the correct Mikrotik. But now I'm just displaying or portraying to you what if it's behind a switch similar to this. This computer is behind a switch or network switch, and the switch is connected to all the port number 5 of the 3 Mikrotik CHRs that were powered up. At least in this demonstration, you might say, how could you say that we are connected on port number 5? So obviously I know that number 5, but the MAC address will tell you, at least on this laboratory. For example, this is 4th or the number 4 on the MAC address. It starts with 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 being the 5th of the ports. So now the question will be which one is for R1. So it could be this one, it could be this one, or it could be this one. So which one is for our R1, our R2, and our R3? Of course, if you are using a simulator such as GNS3, you can just obviously hover to the router and it will just show you which port is it connected. So for example, if I hover on R3 supposedly, so I'll notice that the MAC address is 0C07 for Ether 5. So similarly, I could hover on R1 and I will know 0C38 is the MAC address, the starting MAC address for Ether 5. And I could also do it on R2. So R2 Ether 5 MAC address is 0C33. So from there I could take note, but in reality, if you're not using the virtualization simulator such as GNS3, so you don't have this hover kind of thing that you can know or you will know what is the MAC address. So what you could do is obviously you could right click console and go into the console of this Mikrotik, so admin and no password. Then it will ask you that needs to change the password, so just put in a very simple password for illustration purposes. So I've consoled into our would-be R1 router, but right now the system or the router identity is still Mikrotik. To determine the MAC address for the interface that we are connected, so we'll type interface print, and as you could see, the MAC address that starts for our device is 0C38. So 0C38 will be our R1, so we'll click here. Okay, so we have changed the password, so empty. Okay, so 0C38, then we just click connect, and we are now connected to our would be R1. So changing the router OS or system identity will be easy. So just go to system and find the identity. So instead of Mikrotik, so we will type the R1, but we will put in the AS number, and that would be 65100. So R1 hyphen 65100 for the entire group. Then the other group will be 65150. Then the other group, or the green group, will be 65200. So we've come back, so let's do it quickly. So R1, then we have the 65100 for our R1. So the router identity is changed, so you could verify by going to the new terminal, and instead of admin at Mikrotik, it becomes R1 hyphen 65100. We have exited our Winbox and we are back on this Winbox before we log in. So to illustrate that the R1 was indeed changed, so the identity is now R1 hyphen 65100. So we'll now proceed to the rest, finding the R2 and R3. In the interest of time, so I've consoled into our R2 and log in and do the command interface print, and the MAC address, starting MAC address is 0C33. So the R2 will be with this MAC address and we'll configure it on our Winbox. Back in our Winbox, so 0C33, so let's connect. So we have changed the password already, so let's click connect. And instead of going to system identity, so we will change the identity via the new terminal. So let's expand this terminal so that the current identity is Mikrotik. So we will just change it, or we will change it to R2 65100. Okay, so back in our terminal. So to verify the identity, although we know already the identity, but for command line purposes, so / system identity, then we have the print, or we can F1 also, so F1 for health. Then print is to print the value of the item property, so we type in print, and therefore we will know that the current identity is Mikrotik. So our objective is to change, so we already have the F1 for health set command to change the item properties. So we'll just up arrow and type in the word set, and we can also do an F1 again to determine what's the next. So I need to put in name, and if you press F1, so there's nothing more, so equals, then the name or the new identity, that will be R2 65100. Okay, then we will verify by doing a system identity print, although we will already know here, but just to run this command, then yes, we are indeed change the identity to R2 hyphen 65100. So there's one more left, which is 0C07 without the identity and or carrying the default identity. So we'll just click on it and let's click connect. So if it's our first time, we don't have to put in a password, so connect, and we are now inside. So system, so identity, so no need to go to the command line, so just go to the easy way on the GUI. So R3 65100, click apply, click OK, then new terminal, and basically if we expand this, so no, and change password. Okay, so empty, and we have changed our password, but our objective is just to take a look at the identity, which is R3. So if I'm looking at this diagram, obviously for R1, I would know that R1 has two neighbors, so it has R2 and R3. So for R1's perspective, so R2 and R3. But if you're simply looking at Winbox and you don't have the visibility of the topology, how would you know who are the neighbors of R1? So you can go to R1 and let's take a look. So type in the password, connect. So for you to take a look at the neighbors without the visibility of the topology, so you simply go to IP. So again, we are on system identity, we are on R1. Our objective is to know who are the neighbors of R1. So IP, and we find the neighbors. And from here, you will know that R1 has two neighbors, okay? So R2 on my Ether2 interface and R3 on my Ether3 interface.